environment, every single desktop. How many corporate desktops are in the world? 500 million or something like that? I think we could use VDI on 100% on all 500 million desktops if we fix 5 problems. 5 very simple, little, not hard at all problems, right? So, what's our first problem? User density. When we're talking about VDI, when we're talking about terminal server, right now, as I said, terminal servers can support many, many more users for a certain number of euros than VDI can. For VDI to get to be popular, especially more popular than terminal server, we have to get those user density numbers more the same. I'm not saying it has to be the exact same cost, because it's the same like today with laptops, right? You know, you can spend 500 euros on a netbook or 3,000 euros on a MacBook, and the performance is different. You get what you pay for. But right now, the same is true in terminal server, but we need to make these numbers closer together. But I think that we're going to see where even though VDI today is much more expensive, I think it's going to change. Why is it going to change? A couple reasons. First of all, we're seeing better hypervisors. Hypervisors are doing things like transparent page sharing, and there's the back-end disk deduplication and efficient use of cores and that kind of stuff. So we're always going to see more and more and more and more users, more VMs being able to put on a given set of hardware. The other thing is, why is it? Did you ever wonder this? Like, think of it. Why is terminal server so much more efficient than VDI? Well, they say, okay, not as much overhead, right? But what does that mean? Well, one copy of Windows, one kernel is running, one copy of each DLL is loaded for these kernel DLLs, right? One copy of Windows versus 50 copies of Windows. I mean, okay, you can't put 50 users on VDI, but you know, one copy of Windows versus 6 copies. So that's not fair. 6 copies per core. The thing is, terminal server today shares underlying Windows, but each user session is unique. But what we're starting to see is that a lot of sessions, a lot of this session-based stuff, these advantages that terminal server has, are starting to go away. .NET Framework. How many of you have applications that require .NET Framework? Did you know the Microsoft .NET Framework is a session-level framework? If you have 20 users on a terminal server, that .NET Framework is loaded in all 20 user sessions. Did you know that? A couple of you. By the way, I saw there's some PowerShell sessions here. Incidentally, have any of you rewritten your logon script to work with PowerShell? What happened to your logon times? He's yawning. Yeah. So you have 2-second logon script that works on kicks or command files. PowerShell requires .NET Framework. You take that, make a hello world PowerShell logon script. That logon script doesn't run until the framework loads in that session. So just doing nothing more than a logon script that just prints hello world, you probably added 15 or 20 seconds to your logon script processing. Why am I telling you this? Because there's great advantages that terminal server has with regards to user density. As more and more garbage gets loaded into each user session, we don't get those advantages as much. Another great example of that is all of these rich internet applications. These are the future, right? RIA, rich internet application. Adobe Air, Microsoft Silverlight, Google Gears, Mozilla Prism, all this kind of stuff. Well, you know, every single one of these RIAs is a user mode framework and is running in every single session. Air, Silverlight, .NET Framework, all that stuff in every single session. And in that case, the advantages that terminal server has by sharing resources, by sharing kernel, becomes less case. So the differential, the delta, between the cost of VDI hardware and terminal server hardware, that delta gets smaller and smaller. So much so that I think in a few years, price difference of capital expenditures will not be that different between terminal server and VDI. Sure, probably terminal server will always be a little bit cheaper, but I don't think the difference will be big enough that you go to terminal server just because it's bigger. So this is the first problem I have to solve with VDI. The next one is we will see improvements in remote display protocols. So as it is today, ICA, RDP, there are applications that do not work over this. But Microsoft bought a company called Callista. And Microsoft is building this Callista advanced technology into the version of RDP that comes with Windows Server 2008 R2 and Windows 7. VMware made an agreement with a company called Teradici. And that PC over IP technology we saw yesterday, they're building that capability into the VMware View products. Citrix has ICA and is extending ICA and adding, well, they have already multimedia redirection and flash acceleration, all sorts of things like that. Citrix has actually introduced a new brand called HDX, where they're really focusing on performance. There's a company called Kubernetes, which is bought by Red Hat. They have a SPICE protocol. It's called SPICE. Amazing, amazing performance. Wise has their TCX extensions. My point is, remote protocols are getting better and better and better and better. And I do truly believe that remote display protocols will get good enough that they will work for most use cases. And we will no longer say, I cannot use that application because of a limitation in the remote protocol. Now again, that's not to suggest that all remote computing is fixed, or is solved, I mean. What if I want to edit movies in Adobe Premiere? Perhaps maybe Adobe Premiere works no problem, but if I plug my FireWire camera into my client device to load the movie in Premiere, how big is raw digital video? Anyone know? 13 gigabytes per hour. That's like 300 megabytes per minute to 200 megabytes per minute. So even though the remote display protocols might be good enough that yes, I can use my multi-monitor Adobe video editing software remotely, we're still going to have issues because we're using server-based computing. We can solve that in other ways. Another improvement we're going to see is this thin provisioning, or what I call this Windows layering. So we talked about terminal server, one disk image that's being shared by a bunch of users. Now we talk about VDI, you don't get that inherent in the model. So we have to go towards products like VMware View 3 and Citrix Dynamic Provisioning Services. Has anyone looked at VMware View 3 and anyone looked at the View Composer capability of that? They talk about you separate the user data disk from the Windows disk, right? Which is true, but really all they're doing is profile redirection and redirecting the documents and settings onto that data disk. So it does work for the user profile. We have other issues with that, user installed applications, that sort of thing. So my point is VMware View Composer, it's a nice first version product, but it does not solve all of our thin provisioning problems. There's similar problems with these other technologies. There's products that are coming out, though, that will make the thin provisioning as easy in VDI as it is today in terminal server, where you get it sort of automatically. We're going to see this offline VDI, or the local hypervisors. So we were talking about this before the session began. You know that VMware made the announcement last year in September of VMware CVP, Client Virtualization Platform, right? It's their Type 1 bare metal client hypervisor. Citrix has something called Project Independence, a Zen-based client hypervisor. How many of you want to put hypervisors on your laptops? That's more people than I thought would raise their hands. How many people, when they think of hypervisors on their laptops, think, oh, I just don't want to do that. Yeah, so why? It's funny, people ask me, why are hypervisors on laptops important? Is that so you can run multiple virtual machines at the same time? I don't think so. I mean, yes, it's true. You can run multiple virtual machines at the same time. But to me, the advantage is what else does the hypervisor do? It scrubs the hardware that's presented to the operating system. So now one of the problems we have with managing these desktops and laptops is we have all of these different models, and we cannot use one disk image for all of our laptops and desktops. But if I have a hypervisor running on my laptop and a hypervisor running on my data center, now remember we're focusing on use cases. Now I can maybe make only one Windows disk image and run that disk image in my data center for users who are connecting via server-based computing. And then if you want to go offline, or if there's users, maybe some applications are not compatible with server-based computing, like the Adobe Premiere thing, but they would work fine in a local hypervisor. So now my one disk image works online and offline. That starts to become interesting. Both VMware and Citrix demonstrated here this week their client bare metal hypervisors. Did anyone see these demonstrations in the booths? They're cool. We have this thing, by the way, called Brian Madden TV. It's on brianmadden.com/TV. It's like a weekly kind of internet news show about desktop and application virtualization. It comes out every Thursday, which is today. So today's episode that came out was the wrap-up show of VMworld. And we actually went and did a video recording demo of Citrix's bare metal client hypervisor. And we have an appointment with VMware to go there in a few weeks